Hey,
Hey, how you
I'm
doing?
good. How are you?
Doing well.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
All right, so we have about 30 minutes to talk about our topic of today, which is well-being while Black. When we were having this conversation about doing a live, this was the one that came up for you, and that you were saying that well-being while Black and having this wellness conversation that is impactful for the culture was really meaningful to you. So tell me more about why this is important to you, and why this resonates with you.
Yeah, so when the reason why it resonated with me so much was just that I thought about just the culture that we're in right now, and it seems like it's more important than ever to stay true to who you are, even
Mhm.
if everybody is going against that,
Yeah.
for society and culture. And so, well-being while Black for me just encompasses being true to who I am and my identities. And it also means seeking out those spaces where I can be myself. And whether it's through expression of wearing my hair a certain way or wearing certain clothes, I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable in who I am. And being comfortable in who I am is ultimately being well.
Mm. So then, what I think I'm hearing you say is part of that well-being for us as individuals is what does it look like for me to honor and be true to myself, regardless of kind of what other people might think or feel.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. So, I jumped right into it and I forgot to like share, right? So, I'm Dr. Bernadette Smith. I am the owner of Aspen Counseling and Wellness. And today we have
I'm Kolin Justice. I'm a counselor intern at Aspen. Um, Getting ready to graduate, licensure on the way.
licensure is on the way. And might I say, an amazing counselor. So we're so excited to have you a part of the team. You've been a really great addition. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate most about having you on the team is you being able to kind of create and hold that space for our clients. So one of the things that you were saying about well-being, and well-being is you being like truly authentic for yourself, but I also think that's how we as therapists help to facilitate well-being with our clients, is giving them permission to be true and honoring themselves. So in that, like, how does that then translate into that therapeutic role?
Yeah, so a lot of times people have to portray themselves outwardly to other people as something that isn't true to themselves, specifically with Black people, but of all cultures, something we call code switching. And that's why it's important to have a therapist that looks like you, such as myself, or just somebody that truly understands what is going on and the nuances of the way that you might speak. Um, but just truly, for lack of better words, that somebody just understands you.
Hmm. Hmm. So I'm hearing you say like understands you, and it makes me think about the importance and the significance of community, and how within our communities we feel like connected and understood. What role can community play as it relates to kind of our overall well-being?
Well, community plays a huge role. For starters, you have to go back and look at a lot of our cultures where they start at is collectivist or community based. Versus now in the society that we're in, it's pull myself up by my own bootstraps. It's do everything by myself. And honestly, we're just not designed
Yeah.
that way. So when I think about community, I think about one, getting back to your roots and being able to say, okay, I need people around me who either look like me or that I'm just comfortable with in being myself. And that's going to help me to be well. That's going to help me to succeed. Um, that's what come to mind for that.
So then it's like, how then do you identify kind of community that's good for you, or maybe community that isn't helping you grow and nurturing like kind of the person who you need to be.
Mhm. Any space in which you have to mask yourself. And I understand that there are certain places where, like, let's say for you going to church or going to the grocery store, there's a certain way that you know how to act there. But that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking more so about being around people, and let's say you have a funny joke or something that you're passionate about and you feel as if that's not who you can be accepted as. That's probably not a healthy space for you. Any place where you can send those memes that you kind of save in your folder and you don't really want to share, or that you can just laugh around if you have what you might think is an ugly laugh, but you can do it around certain people. That's a safe space for you. Those are the people that you want to keep in your life. Those are the connections in the community that are important for our well-being.
Yeah, no, I get that. I definitely appreciate the communities that I have, and where I'm able to be, the variations of myself and be comfortable in that. And I think kind of what I'm hearing you say is just being in a space to where you're not feeling judged. So I heard you say masking, and let me start by saying I was definitely blessed prior to starting Aspen, and that I was at an HBCU for over a decade, right? So I was in a very like safe, comfortable space. Something happened on the news, you're going into a work environment where people feel the same way about the events that are taking place, and it was really great. However, I had peers who were in working environments, and that same event would go on the news, and then they are called out, not called out, but like wanting to be like, hey, so what do you think about this, right, as the Black voice, or not being able to fully express that. So then what then becomes that balance, right? Because there are certain spaces where, places in which you work, we all see what's going on now with these different, rules that they're trying to force down the pipeline. When you're in an environment where you have to mask, how then do you support yourself, or how then do you re-energize yourself? Like, what does that then look like when you're in that space and then out of that space?
Mhm. Well, first, I want to start by saying that it's unfortunate that we have to go through that in the first place.
That part.
Nobody should have to be
That
uh,
part.
the spokesperson for all Black people or all of whomever. And going back to what I feel like well-being is, I think we talked about it before. You mentioned putting down notes to yourself that say something that reminds you of who you are, and maybe even who you desire to be. In these spaces, you have to be able to, the balance, at least, and I can only speak for myself, right? But the balance for me is one, uh, as soon as I clock out, or as soon as I am no longer in that space where it is required of me, um, definitely taking advantage of that by whatever means, whether it's listening to music, whether it's, doing a little dance, whatever. But if you're in those spaces, trying to maximize whatever it is that you already have access to. Do they allow you to play music from your computer? Are you allowed to take breaks and go on a walk? Is there a way for you to um, create that space for yourself? Because a lot of times it's not given to
Yeah.
you.
Oh, I love that. You say creating that space, because a lot of the times it's not given to you. And so it's that advocating for yourself, checking in with yourself, identifying, okay, what is it that I need in this moment? So I'm gonna tell y'all what I used to do. So this was prior to me being at my HBCU. And I had, look, I'm gonna give y'all a little visual too. So I had a coworker, and she hit me to the game. So she would get her little manila folder, and she would leave the office. And she said that when she had a manila folder in her hands, And if she was like walking around, people just assumed she was working because you got a manila folder. So clearly you're about to go get some paperwork signed or drop some paperwork off or something. And when I tell you, I was like, bet. And that's what I would do. I would get overwhelmed and I would grab our little manila folder or those ones where the little envelope folders,
Yeah.
I would grab something and I would just go for a little walk
Yeah.
because they're not typically questioning you on that. So yeah, that I think is great. And then it makes me think about that micro self care, micro wellness, like those little things. So is that listening to music? Is that going for a walk? Is that taking your manila folder and going and getting that important, stuff taken care of? So,
Mhm.
and the other thing is being able to identify who your allies are in that space. So there definitely were a lot of times at that place where I was talking about my cousin worked there as well. So I would go to my cousin's office and, go hang out there for a little bit and then come back and recoup in that space.
Mhm.
Okay. So that kind of makes me think about what you were talking about earlier about like in our society, we kind of see things as individualistic, but really we thrive in community and being able to find those connections and finding those allies and finding those safe spaces is what helps to kind of foster our overall mental health and recognizing that our mental health is strength.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that you said before is just that, like, our mental health is an act of strength. Like, what does that look like, and how can we continue to um, empower that part of ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah. And so for me, what I viewed as strength was vulnerability
Mm,
specifically, and that being in tune with your emotions and recognizing whenever you're not okay is one step, but then not just trying to take it in all by yourself and actually seeking help takes a lot more strength than trying to muscle through it, because realistically, you can't muscle through it. It's going to wear you down, and we're not meant to go through this life alone. So, what I saw as strength in being able to say, "Hey, I need help," and depend on those other people is that ultimately we all view strength as being able to handle, so many things going on. But if you ask anybody that you view as strong, they'll let you know, like, I couldn't have done this by myself. I needed the community. I needed these different people in my life that supported me. And while on that surface, I may look strong, I may be a pillar of my community, I'm human just like the
mhm,
rest of you. Um, and so being able to share with others whenever things aren't good is important because they'll see that and recognize, okay, well, I can do the same thing. If they are, if I look up to them and they're a pillar and they do all these things, but they recognize whenever things are not going well, then I can do the same thing. I can reach out to others, and it just becomes a cycle of that positive cycle. We
mhm,
also talk about negative ones, but this is a positive cycle of seeing others do the right thing by seeking help and then saying, I'm going to do the same thing.
mhm. And then the other thing I want to add to it, I want to add a couple of things, right? Like not just seeking help, but seeking support, seeking somebody to help hold you accountable and growth. And it makes me think about like when I was in the gym the other day, there was somebody who was lifting, and somebody was like, "Hey, do you need somebody to spot you?" Right? Like we don't see that as, "Oh, you're not strong enough to lift that weight." It's just that additional support so that you can continue to reach your goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that then becomes that misconception sometimes because seeking out therapy in the past wasn't really afforded to us. But now we have more avenues to which we can seek support. But then also, there's more therapists that look like us. So it makes it easier to seek support, right? And so being able to recognize, okay, this is an opportunity where I can strengthen myself, work on the goals that I have, because that's what we do, right? Like in our intake session, as you know, we get that history so that we can identify, well, what are those goals?
Hmm.
And how are we going to help you reach those goals? It's not just coming to therapy and complaining.
Hmm.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that would be horrible, right? Like that
Yeah,
would be horrible, right? Like it's like, okay, we have this information. How then are we going to build, and how are we going to strengthen ourselves so that we can continue to reach those goals and become the best versions of who we want to be? Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And I really like that analogy with lifting weights, because just because you have a spotter does not mean that you're going to fail.
Yeah.
It just means that in the case that you do, you have the support. And
It
just like a
doesn't mean you're not
therapist,
strong.
yeah, yeah, not at all. Just like a therapist is there, you can be, on your merry way, improving your life and becoming the person that you want to be. But there's going to be trials, there's going to be things that happen in your life, and you have that extra support outside of your community, an actual objective professional who knows, how to support you in those different times.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And see, since we're using, the gym, and it makes me think again about, like, I have a trainer. I was exercising on my own, but was doing it poorly. Okay. Not only was I doing it poorly, I wasn't executing it the way I needed to be executed. And so now he's giving me the tools and telling me how to execute things appropriately. And when he sees that my form is off, he's like, hey, change this. And
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, well, and I'm like, hey, I didn't know. That's how I've been doing it.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
so sometimes when we're working with our clients, it's like, oh, that's how I've been doing it. It's like, okay, cool. Let me show you this other tool. Let me show you this other technique. Let me show you this other way of navigating this space
Hmm.
that you may not have known existed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'm here for it. So, so yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, because this is definitely like my space and the space that I enjoy being in. So, what are some other things, or what are some takeaways and some tips that you would want people to know when we're looking at kind of cultivating our wellness and self care, but then also preserving it?
um I think the first uh, I guess piece of advice or tip that I would have is to consistently check in with yourself. It's very easy to just keep it pushing. And there's so much going on in this world that if you actually take a step back, you recognize like these are unprecedented times. Um, and we're just living day to day lives as if these crazy things aren't happening. So checking in with yourself and being able to see, how do I feel about these things? And then once you recognize how you feel, being able to express that, having a journal, even if it's social media, being able to post on there.
What, be mindful of what you're posting on social media. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of
Be
course,
mindful of what you're
of
posting. But no,
course.
but I feel you, right? Like being able to identify how you want to give yourself permission to express.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. But I'm
Me
sorry,
too.
I interrupted you. I heard that. I'm like, okay, we got to preference that.
Yeah, yeah,
I
no.
don't want anybody saying Colin told me. No, Colin did not tell you to
Yeah, no,
put your
I do
guard
not want the
down.
police knocking on your door,
Yeah.
but um, there are healthy ways to express the things that you're dealing with, and um, different ways to cope as well. And so, as you have to figure out, or have a therapist help you figure out what works for you and what doesn't. Uh, um, what works for you and what doesn't. Because a lot of times we go throughout our lives and we have these unhealthy coping mechanisms that we just are like, well, that's just how I do it. This is how I get through life's trials. This is what I do, and then you learn a way to actually cope with whatever it is that you're going through, and you open up so much more for yourself in terms of just living. Uh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that when you're like, oh, well, that's just what I do. And sometimes the things of that's just what I do are just things that have been passed down from one generation to another. and recognizing that if they did not have the appropriate coping skills and techniques and weren't given those tools, then how were we then going to develop it, right? And so I think about with my kids, um, I'm teaching them how to breathe, right? So if they're upset, I'm like, hey, let's breathe, let's calm our body down, let's calm our body down, let's use our words. How are you feeling, right? Because I recognize when I'm working with the adults that I work with, a lot of the times they don't have those tools yet. So we're having to develop and build them. And it's never too late to develop and build them. But also recognizing if we didn't have a family structure or a family system that understood healthy coping mechanisms, then maybe the ways in which, oh, that's just what I've always done. Yeah, maybe that is working, but maybe we can also add some other stuff to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I used to, of course, I make grits the right way with salt and cheese. And so the right way, the right, watch out, Colin.
No, that's
I
not
still got
right.
to sign off on your hours. Watch out.
I can't do
but
that.
but then I was talking to somebody, they were like, oh, try adding different things, right? And so I started adding different cheeses, and now I add like cream cheese to it, and oh my God, it makes it
Oh,
so creamy and delicious.
oh no. Oh no. I just need sugar with my grits and I need a lot of
No. And all I'm
it.
saying, Colin, is all I'm saying is maybe you need some different techniques and tips. But to that, right? So sometimes it is like, oh, that's just the way it's done. And it really is a family structure, right? I eat grits this way because that's how my daddy cooked grits.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You eat grits that way because that's how somebody in your family, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then it's also being able to say, okay, if this is how we then do it, right? So I don't like sweet grits, but have you ever cooked your grits in boiling milk? It'll it'll make it like sweeter as well,
Hmm.
right? And so you're giving it that sweetness. And so sometimes it's more so, oh, how then do we look at this coping mechanism? How then do we look at this problem from a different vantage point so that we can develop and strengthen ourselves up in a different way? All right.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this conversation, Colin. And I cannot say this enough. Like, you are amazing. You do amazing work. Um, Anybody would be lucky to have you as a therapist. And so, as we're closing out, I was going to ask you this question, but I'm going to put you on the spot because I just saw a question pop up. And I want you to kind of close us out by answering this question of how does one break that structure, like break that cycle?
Yeah. Um, so first you have to be able to recognize that the structure exists in the
That
first place. Um,
part.
if you've been doing it all your life, it happens without even thinking most of the time. So if you ask somebody like, "Have you noticed that you bite your nails?" Like, "What? I don't bite my nails." Like, "Yeah, you've been doing that." And it takes an outside perspective, i.e., therapy, to see those things. Then, after you've recognized, what it is that is kind of continuously happening, learning alternate ways and then actually implementing them. And so it takes some consistency. There's going to be some trial and error, but there's a plethora of um, different coping mechanisms and ways to express yourself. Some that you may come up with by yourself originally. It might be just for you and it may not work for anybody else, but ultimately that is probably one of the best ways to, um, sorry, um, to reach that goal of living a
Mhm.
life that you are desiring to
Yeah.
live. Not be held back by those previous structures and things that you just thought you were supposed to do.
hmm So then what I'm hearing you say is one, recognizing it's a process that can take time, right? When we're creating a new pattern, it can take some time to do, but then also being able to recognize that there is something that you want to change. Now, you may not necessarily need to identify what exactly it is, just like, hey, things aren't really working for me. I need something different. I don't know what it is. And then that can be our goal, our role as therapists to identify, hey, did you ever think about this might be the issue and that might be the issue, because we're trained to look at it from that space. And then from that, what I think I'm hearing you say is that's where we then start to teach and utilize some of the tools that we've developed, like cognitive behavior therapy tools, like restructuring thoughts and thought stopping and solution focused type skills, and really kind of equipping them up in that
Yeah.
way. Um, I appreciate you, Colin. Again, Colin is an amazing part of our team and an amazing therapist. He has availability to start that counseling process. If you are wanting to identify ways where you can strengthen your overall wellness, where you can look at coping skills in an environment where you feel like you have to mask all the time, or if you just want somebody to help support you in reaching your goals that you have for your life so that you can be the best version of yourself. You can learn how to schedule an appointment with him. All you have to do is go on our website, which is aspencw.com, and you can talk over to him and schedule your appointment. All right. Thank you all for joining.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Colin.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Smith, for those amazing words. I really do look forward to working with anybody who's seeing this. I'm passionate about helping others, and so I look forward to helping you.
Yeah. All right. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.